Hello and welcome. This is the Career Revolution interview series. And today we're going to be interviewing the Thesis coach, Caroline Dale. She's backstage. She's about to come on any minute. But before we bring her on, I just want to remind you what the Career Revolution interview series is. It's a combination of interview series with inspiring people who've revolutionized their careers, and then followed up with strategy sessions that I host to help you land the thinking, land the strategy, and be able to implement it so that you too can revolutionize your career. All about ordinary people doing the extraordinary things. This is the place for you to find inspiration and excitement to do something different in your career. Without any further ado, I'm going to welcome Caroline Dale from the Thesis Coach. Not from, Caroline Dale is the Thesis Coach. Welcome, Caroline. Welcome.
Thank you, Licia. This is awesome. Very new experience for me. So, yes, I'm excited to share what I've done with you. So thank you for inviting me.
It's an absolute pleasure. From stockbroking, Johannesburg Stock Exchange, to the Thesis Coach, and everything in between. We're going to jump into that. And I really want to know about all the career catalysts and the changes and the thinking that went on. But let's start with just give us a quick overview of what is a thesis coach. What is it that you do?
Okay, so a thesis coach really is a guiding hand or navigator to help you get through the thesis part of your academic program. So most academic programs or degrees have an academic part, and they have a compulsory thesis component, which you have to submit in order to, in fact, graduate and finish your degree. So a thesis coach is somebody who helps you to navigate that process right over the whole period of the timeline of your submission. So that's what it is. It's a guiding hand.
And you chose to become a thesis coach because you yourself studied and saw that there was this gap, this need, this necessity. You needed somebody who could coach you. I mean, don't the institutions provide this support and offer?
Okay, so it's an interesting story. So to answer the first part of the question, when I was doing my master's degree, I was specifically in the thesis part of the year, I had a complete sort of breakdown because I got to a stage where I just couldn't think anymore about how to put this thing together. And for about 3 days, I didn't stop crying and I wanted to pull my hair out, and I couldn't find anybody to help me. So that was the problem. I couldn't speak to friends. I couldn't speak to family. Nobody understood just quite what I was going through. So yes, universities, you know what? The universities are there. They provide you with a supervisor when you're doing a thesis, but the supervisor is very dedicated and knowledgeable about the content. So they will help you devise your topic. They will help you put your thoughts together around the problem. And they will guide you through the technical aspects of actually getting the words right and what you're going to do. But they're not there to help you when you're falling apart because you feel like all the work you've done is useless and absolutely a waste of time and so on. So that's what happened to me. And then I realized that I didn't have anybody to turn to. And it was when I came out of that complete anxiety breakdown situation, I thought to myself, gee whiz, there's got to be somewhere that I can use this to help other people. So that it was a real live experience. That
Wonderful. Can I start you at the part where you exited formal employment, where you stopped becoming an employee? You were with the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, and then there's this kind of independent consulting story in between, and then thesis coach. But talk to us around that, because that in itself is a little mini revolution.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The thing was that the interesting story for me really is that I loved my job at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. I was very happy there. So I had a great boss. I was reporting into the executive committee. I had started a projects office at the JSE, which was my kind of claim to fame around there, because I realized that the business and the IT divisions weren't talking to each other. So I started a projects office. I was successful at it. It was a great career move for me. But what happened was my husband at the time, who wasn't my husband at the time, but he went to, to continue his career, he went off to Zambia. And I decided to jump off a cliff into an abyss and say, okay, well, if that's what you're doing, I'm going to kind of follow you. I'm going to follow your dream, and I'm going to hold on to mine for now. So I bailed out of the JSE and I was very happy. So like I say, it was a bit of a windfall. But what happened was I then had my first daughter, so that gave me time to do that, and I followed Tom to Zambia. So I used to travel every second week and so on. So that was where it all started. Yeah. So it was kind of like I didn't want necessarily out of the corporate world, but it happened by accident because of my relationship, and that's where it all started.
So is that how the independent consulting came? You were in between relocation, different locations, having babies, getting married, having babies, and in whatever order that necessarily came in. So it really, you weren't able to then commit into another corporate role. So it wasn't I need to get out of this. It was just the way it was, that life took you out of it.
Exactly right. So the reality for me was that I got to a point after all of this, when I'd made this major jump, where I felt that my head was not being used properly, and I felt like, I wasn't being challenged enough. So then I decided to embark on extra studies. So I went into studying full-time, pretty much full-time. So I went to Stellenbosch University. I registered for a psychology degree. So I did an undergraduate psychology degree. I did an honors degree in psychology. And then I went on to do a postgraduate degree. So I really went straight back to study mode. Yeah.
So you kind of became a professional student in a way. Your work was studying this academic world of being a student. So how many years were you studying for? How long? That's quite a couple of degrees that you've listed.
It was, yeah. Over time, it eventually it was about 7 or 8 years that I put these things together. And then what happened was, my idea or my goal was that I wanted to be a clinical psychologist. So that was the plan, and I wanted to start practice as a clinical psychologist. But sadly for me, and disappointing for me, was that I applied to 3 universities at the time in the Western Cape, and I wasn't accepted into any of them. So this huge disappointment for my country. And I thought, no, I've been studying all this, and I got distinctions everywhere. So I was a really top class student, in my opinion. But they only take, I think, 5 or 6 people a year from about 800 applications at every university, and I didn't get in.
Disappointment for you at the time, but what a luck for all the students that you're coaching and helping to get their thesis out, because those are the sort of sliding doors of life where your career could have gone off in a completely different trajectory.
Absolutely. And so I think, look, the thing was, after I got over my disappointment, somebody said to me, you've got to do a master's degree in coaching. That's what you've got to do, because coaching is the new help for people.
Yes.
And eventually I changed my mindset, and I was like, okay, so a psychologist is seeing people who come to them with a problem to be fixed. So they get diagnosed with something that's wrong with them. And a coach has there's a very different outlook. There's all right, you're not coping too well, because that's life, and we often don't cope. But we're not diagnosing you with a problem. What we're going to do is look at you and say, okay, let's help you make a success of whatever it is that you're trying to do. So there's a complete different mindset. Okay. So I was very grateful, and yes, it turned out for the best. So
it turned out for the best. It's so interesting, the influences that guide us along the way. You said, someone said to me, you need to do a master's in coaching. That person played a pivotal role in where you are now. And yet at the time, it might have just been, oh, maybe this is a good thing. Yes, I shall do this. Isn't it fascinating how when we look back on our career and we look back on the narrative and the journey, how sometimes there are nuances that we would never have appreciated at the time.
Absolutely. So the interesting thing was, you're absolutely right now that you mentioned that, because I hadn't given that thought, but I did, in order to help my clinical psychology process, I went and did a 2-year postgraduate diploma at Stellenbosch University in addiction care, just because it's something that fascinates me. Okay.
Yes.
So I did this 2-year thing, hoping that it would promote my application to get into clinical psychology. As it turns out, it didn't, but I finished that qualification. But it was, in fact, a clinical psychologist at a rehab center that I was doing some intern work for that said to me, go and do a coaching master's degree. It was actually that person. So it was those two worlds that coincided that actually put me on that path. So that's,
that came together. And then was it in the time that you were doing your master's that you thought, there needs to be a thesis coach? I need somebody to help me with the, so was that junction in the master's that you
was. So again, so the way I look at it is, I kind of look at my life and think, I've almost come full circle, because when I left school, I wanted to be a teacher. So I actually went to university to study a teaching degree. And then I was partway through that and decided, don't want to be that anymore. I want to be an accountant. So I went through, various different options of what I wanted to do. As it turns out, I didn't eventually do any degree when I left school. I started working straight away, and I started working in the IT industry. So IT took me to the stockbroking firm. IT then took me to the JSE, which took me into project management. And then then I bailed out of the JSE, and then I started doing a lot of entrepreneurial work. So I had many entrepreneurial things going on, from owning a retail outlet to owning a guest house to getting into real estate. There was a whole bunch of things that I did in between studying. And I couldn't quite find my place. I couldn't quite find, where do I want to be? Yeah. Why am I doing all this? I've got all this going on. I keep starting businesses. I keep doing that. Where do I actually want to be? And it was through the master's degree and the pain and anxiety and suffering of doing that thesis that all came together and said, right, from wanting to be a teacher, through project management, through studying, through psychology, through all of those things, I've kind of got full circle. And all of those things have helped me to develop my methodology, which I use to help students, which is, I call the Dale method, but it's this full methodology, but it's all these aspects of my life that have pulled it together. Yeah.
And I think that's the power of our story. It's the things that we can teach something when we've felt the pain. We're best at it when we've understood it and when we've walked the journey. So absolutely. So you're in your master's, you're having breakdown, meltdown, frustration. You need somebody to help you. The academic realm is there to support you with the academics, but nobody's really coaching you with how to write it, how to get it out, how to do it, how to manage your mindset and how to prepare for it. You see there's this opportunity.
Yes, here you've disappeared.
Oops.
Hello? Have I got disappeared for a minute? Yes.
Disappeared for a minute. We're back. So acknowledging that there is a need for somebody to help coach students through their theses, and then filling that need and becoming that person, that in itself is a big revolution. What were you thinking? What was going through your mind? I mean, it's the entrepreneur journey. It's the journey of the entrepreneur going, I have something that I'm excited and passionate about, and I want to go out and do it. Nobody's doing it before, so I'm going to go out and I'm going to create it. I'm just going to be this person and do it. Tell us about what you were thinking. I mean, what was going through your mind, and what were the catalysts or the steps that you took to get to creating the Dale methodology, becoming the thesis coach? Who what was happening?
Okay, so that's also quite interesting, because fortuitously, I was standing in the library at the business school one day, and I was taking out some theory books, and I saw a book on the shelf, the bestseller or new releases, and there was a book there called Finish Your Dissertation on Time, which was written by somebody in America, and I followed this person quite closely and read the book, and I've looked at all her work, and she has a huge big practice on helping people through their thesis and dissertation. So that was kind of the light bulb moment.
Nudge.
Yeah, there was this nudge. Her practice is way bigger. It offers way more. But there was this whole thing about just the process. And having done the master's degree, when you do a master's degree, you get introduced, well, in mine, you get introduced to a lot of theories, a lot of very clever people out there who are saying things about coaching and why coaching works and so on. And when I did my psychology degree, I also got introduced to a lot of theories and models and different things, clever people who have figured out how the mind works, how coaching works, etc. So what I did was I used this woman, and I don't know whether I can mention her name, but I used her book and I used her thinking. And from that and a whole lot of other research with my own methodology, with where my own thinking was going in terms of methodologies and models, I built my own methodology. So I started to slowly but surely put things together. And I said, okay, if we're going to do a thesis, what is the major blocks and things that you're going to go through? Now, when I did my master's in coaching, I had to develop a coaching model. So I took that coaching model that I developed in my academic year and I refined it to now bring it into the world of, this is what I'm going to do. It becomes now the Dale method coaching model.
Okay, wonderful. So you knew that you wanted to be a coach. You knew you had that clarity. You knew you wanted to go out into the world and help and coach. You'd moved away from the psychology where you didn't want people coming to you where you diagnosed. You wanted to go out and coach and support. So you were looking for what was my niche of coaching to be. There was that swirling around throughout the masters. So quite meta, actually, because you were doing the masters to become the coach. And then in the masters, it was like, this is the coach I'm going to become, which is the thesis coach.
Exactly. You know, an interesting thing happened. And we had, my colleagues and I, when we were doing the masters, had this conversation many times, is, you know, when you go in to do that coaching masters, I had this idea in my head that I was doing the masters. It was costing me a lot of money. And I was at the end of my 2 years after doing my thesis, I was going to have this fully fledged coaching business. That was
people lining up at the door waiting to,
No. I was going to be a coach with a flourishing practice, and it was all going to be absolutely wonderful. It took me very quickly to realize that this actually wasn't going to happen at all, that actually there was still going to be a building of a business. So so my mind right through the whole coaching program was, where is this actually going? And you must know, I went through, because I'd done the addiction course, I went through, should I become an addiction coach? I was going to write a thesis on addiction. I have a lot of history in our own family with addiction from many sides. So it was, where am I taking this thing? And it was through my own absolute stress and pain doing the thesis that the thesis coach materialized. So I don't know if I'm answering your question or if I'm going.
No, you are. You completely are. And you said something that's so key to me. It was through the pain and the frustration that grounded you into light bulb. This is something I can do. This is what I can do. And I've heard this a couple of times here in the Career Revolution. It looks different for everyone, but what comes before the revolution is a heck of pain. It's a lot of frustration. It's a lot of not nice feelings. Let's face it, we don't necessarily, I don't know what it is about the human condition that we don't go and revolution ourselves when we're in a space of comfort and warmth and happiness. That's generally not where our biggest leaps take place. The biggest leaps often come out of places of pain. So yours looked like that's so unique to you and your experience, but everybody's journey comes from a place of pain. And then comes the big revolution. Then comes the wonder after it. So it's fascinating to me.
You know, when I went to university, when I left school and I went to university, my initial idea was to become a teacher. So that was what I wanted to study. And very quickly, I realized I didn't want to be a teacher. So I can't remember exactly what happened, but there was this, don't want to do that. But it's kind of as if, because I did go to university when I left school, but I didn't actually qualify. I didn't graduate in anything. And it took me life and some living to get to where I actually wanted to go with all of this. And so for me, it's been a revelation, because all these things that I've done have kind of all come together, and eventually it gets back down to being a teacher almost. So I'm a coach, yes, but I'm not
teaching. You're teaching people,
how to get through their thesis. So I'm kind of teaching and coaching and mentoring. So I'm doing all those things. But I come from a place of wanting to mentor and coach and teach and work with people that are doing postgraduate stuff. So I don't want to work with people, the younger people, not because it's because I want to go to the more adult people that are very sure about what they're doing, or at least know why they're doing it. It's not because they're being told by their firm or their parents or whatever. There's got to be some real meaning in why are you doing this degree? Because when you have to write a thesis, it's hectic, you know. It
takes everything out of you. Yeah,
it really is a story. Yeah.
I loved that you said, you know, you needed to do a bit of living. You needed to get out into life and to do a bit of living for everything to somehow come forth and for it to be clear enough for you, in a way, for you to know what it is that you wanted to do.
So the pain, was what got me there. My own pain was what actually gave me that jolt. And it kind of felt good, because everything that I'd ever done, all of a sudden, all came together in this one big ball of light. And it's I can take this and I can do it till my end. You know, I can work with it until there comes a time where I no longer can, you know, where I can't Zoom with anyone anymore because I'm just not quite with the program, you know, or something like that. I can keep doing it till
this is it. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like the ball of light. I love that. I mean, I talk about in my process, in my work, I talk about helping people stand in the sunshine of their career. And I mean, the word career denotes or sounds as if it's climbing the corporate ladder, when it's not. My definition of career is the thing that you do that gives you happiness, finding your source work. So when I say stand in the sunshine of your career, wherever that might be, in whatever space, wherever that looks like. But yes, you know, you're radiant within the ball of light that suddenly came together and gave you that sense and understanding. But before we go into talking a little bit more about your method, your process, and what it is that you actually do and who you help, because I think that's so interesting and fascinating for everybody who's listening. And if anybody has any questions, please post them in the comments. Carolyn and I are going to respond to the questions in the comments. Before the ball of light and the revolution, there was a whole lot of pain and a whole lot of frustration. What I'm hearing you say is that you were moving through it, but you were looking for the answers. So you weren't kind of waiting for somebody to come and save you or come and help you. You weren't, you know, you knew that this coaching practice that you were studying wasn't going to just, doors were going to be open and there'll be a line of people there. You understood that. But your actual, what got you out of the stuck, what got you to the thing was you needed to do it. So you had to produce this thesis. You couldn't, you know, you were in a process of completing your master's and you had to do that. It was in retrospect of having looked at it. But you were looking for answers. You were probing. You were wondering, what could I do? You know, you constantly had that on your mind. And I think that's something that's interesting, because so often many people come to me wanting the silver bullet. Give me the answer. And, you know, I'm like, no, that's, well, one, I can't. Who can? Only you know. And two, that's not really what my process is. My process is we'll work together and we'll figure it out. But there tends to be a somewhat of a desire for just give me what it is that I need to do, and so that I can go and do that. I think there's a part of the human condition that doesn't enjoy the messy, that doesn't want to be stuck. Clearly, who wants to be? Nobody does. But there's goodness that comes from being in the messy, wading through the water, trying to figure out what it is, thinking, looking, questioning, probing. That in itself is an incubation phase that we can't really skip out. It's a little bit like the butterfly analogy. You know, they need to develop the strength of their wings within that incubation phase. And then comes the revolution. So then perhaps it's pain, then it's incubation, then ball of light and revolution. So I want to talk about that incubation stage for you, if that's okay. Are you following me with this?
I'm following you, yes.
Great.
I think, yes.
And part of something that I know that you've done is the De Martini breakthrough process. Dr. John De Martini, the breakthrough process. I think his work is phenomenal. Absolutely in awe of what he's created in the world and what he brings into the world. And I really enjoy his value determination process amongst many things.
Yes.
Was that something that supported you? I mean, you were investing in yourself. You were doing a number of things. Did you lean into that? Did the breakthrough help you when you were in this incubation, messy, stuck, what thinking point?
Absolutely. Look, I have a lot of respect for the man. I'm not sure that I agree with every single part of his process. Maybe it's not because I don't agree. It may be because I don't understand, because I think he's very clever and I don't always understand what he's talking about.
Yeah.
The breakthrough experience for me was actually more about needing some time to go and invest in myself, go away on my own, I was in the city center in Cape Town, get into the city, go and stay in a hotel, go and learn something about myself. It was all about me as the individual.
Your personal journey.
My own personal journey, yeah.
But that's key for what helped you with the revolution. That's key for what that self-knowledge, know thyself, understand thyself. I mean, that's fundamental in being able to help you move.
Yes. And his values determination was very important. In fact, as I sit here, I'm just thinking, he does it. You can do a values determination from his website, which is it's a story. It's not something you just want to, snap your fingers to. You've got
I bring it into my process. I work with some of my clients when in the Know Yourself stage, we deep dive into that if it's relevant and if it's going to fit their journey. So it's not necessarily relevant with everyone, but it's amazing. And in fact, I have a bit of a segue story to tell you about Dr. John De Martini. I met him when he was in Cape Town. I've attended a lot of his events. I've actually never done the breakthrough myself because I felt as if I'd already had my breakthrough, if that makes sense. I didn't choose to go through the breakthrough experience, but I've definitely spent lots of time, spent investment within other areas of what he does. But I was interviewed on a podcast and he was the guest before me, not literally in the studio, but the way that the show flow worked out. And the conversation that came up, he was talking about how people hit crisis and so forth. And then the interviewer said to me, so we've just been talking to John De Martini and he's been talking about crisis. And we're going to talk to Lisa about career crisis. She's the career strategist. And I immediately said, well, actually, I disagree with the word crisis. I think it is a crisis, but because it was a mid-year crisis. Sorry, he was talking about people who hit a mid-year crisis. And I said, I don't think a mid-year crisis deserves to be called a crisis. I think it's a mid-year catalyst. So it's the thing that people hit when they, mid-year, it's a catalyst. So we had this funny sparring conversation around, I was the one that was disagreeing with what Dr. John De Martini said. So, gosh, yes. He's an amazing man and hugely intelligent. And I probably don't understand most of the stuff that he says too sometimes because it's phenomenal. But segue off, back to you. So you've done the breakthrough. So you had invested in some really interesting things within yourself and within your understanding over and above your qualifications, over and above the masters. And then you saw that things were coming together. This was it. And then what did you do? I mean, then it gets to like you then become, how do I create this business? Where do I go? What happens? Like talk us through there, that point.
Yeah, it was, I was looking for something. So I was actively looking for something. The rest of the group that did the master's degree with me, I kind of got the feeling that they all knew where they were going with this coaching thing. And I was the one who didn't know where I was going. So, I felt like a bit of a, the imposter syndrome. So I kind of felt like, what am I going to do with this? So I was actively looking all the time. And I think, really, I think it was going through the experience, realizing that I had nobody, there was nobody to turn to. I wanted somebody that I could, really throw my thoughts and feelings and anxieties at. So the process happened. I got involved with the thinking. I got involved with the the methodology that I wanted to use. So I started designing this methodology around how do you get your timeline sorted out to get this process, because so many people start doing their thesis way too late. They don't start thinking about it. When are they going to be to be proactive, get it off the ground? So I started diving into a lot of theory. And so I built this methodology based on kind of robust theories that are out there by very clever people. And yeah, I built the methodology. I started buying into it. I started coaching people, and it became a thing. It became a thing.
So were you coaching?
It helped me.
Sorry, were you coaching people from the pool of masters that you were working with from the university? Was that where you went and you said, I'm going to coach you? How did you get your first client?
So I got my first client by speaking to people that were in the following year. So what happens at the university is they give you an opportunity to put your profile, to put yourself out there on the university hub. So I put myself on the university hub, and I built a website. That was very important for me. Get something going. So I built this website. I put my profile out onto the university, and so people slowly started to call me. It's been a long thing. This all happened in 2018. So it's now 2021. So it's been years, but now it's really gathering momentum. So now
yes.
I'm getting real good feedback now. So it's all happening at the time. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's so wonderful. I absolutely celebrate the work that you're doing. Tell us who you work with specifically. So it's students who need to write a thesis. Could it be somebody who's doing a PhD, MBA? I mean, it's postgraduate, but industry isn't specific. Topic of thesis isn't specific. You coach them with how to get it done.
Yes. So it's about the process. So the process looks like this. You need a timeline. Let's start there. Then you need to make sacrifices. You need to contract. A lot of people think, we just fit it into our lives. It doesn't go like that. It's got to be properly thought through. Then how do you do the planning? People think they know how to plan. I must tell you, in my experience so far, 99.9% of people don't know how to plan. And me being an OCD planner, I've got it down to a fine art.
Yes.
And then it starts to become a bit of the methodology goes around habits. Where are your habits lying? How are you forming habits? And I do research all the time. I'm forever researching into the clever guys out there that are writing books about all this stuff. And then because I've got an honors degree in psychology, because I went on a huge big I need more qualifications because I'm not good enough to do anything kind of process. But I've got an honors degree in psychology. So one of the parts of my methodology is definitely psychological barriers. What's stopping you?
Mindset.
Are you aiming for perfectionism, mindset, blah, blah, blah. And then I like to part of the process is make a pact with yourself. And that pact, we know what a pact means. Let's make a pact with this, but I call it a personal action commitment timetable. So make this personal action commitment timetable to yourself, and let's work together. So I then become an accountability partner. So I will you. So it's about the process, not the content. I can't be a specialist. I just don't know, all that stuff.
Enough. So, yes. Well, I think you know plenty with your qualifications, your experience. I think you're a very clever person, and you probably could be a content specialist, but not to all your students. I get your point. Caroline, does your process, do you touch on at any point why they're choosing to do this? Absolutely. What the qualification means to them? Because again, like you, a little bit like your story, I'm doing this because I want this to be something that I move towards in my career. And what if you pick up that there is disconnect at that point?
You raise probably the most important problem that exists out there, and that is that people are not committed and enthusiastic about the topic that they choose, and it's essential. So my whole methodology is built on the basis that you have thought very thoroughly about what you want. It's got to resonate with you. It's got to be authentic. It's got to be something that you want to give to the world. Otherwise, you've got to hold this thing. It's like a baby. You've got to hold it, and you've got to nourish it, and you've got to nurture it, and you've got to work with it each and every day. And if you're not inspired by it, then your problem is very big. So it's really essential that is that it really is a topic choice that appeals to you and resonates with you.
I can imagine. Caroline, the thesis coach. This is not called episode Grow for no small coincidence. It's intentional because of the growth that you went through, of the revolutions that took place within your journey, your career, and most importantly, how you're helping other people grow within this amazing niche that came out of your pain point of, I'm not going to get this thesis out. I'm not going to do it. I so completely love that. We're staying close on LinkedIn. I'm definitely going to be following your journey. I love hearing that it's getting a groundswell of movement because I think everybody who's embarked upon this big study journey and a postgraduate, I mean, as you said, it's adults who, they've got life, they've got other things happening, they've got their careers, they've got life, they've got all sorts of things happening, and they certainly need to have that coaching. So thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your thoughts, sharing some vulnerability too, and letting me ask some questions and probe into the messy and understand what the pain was. It's been really wonderful having you here. You and I are going to stay close to the comments and offer any questions. And I can see that there's some people who've joined and they're watching from all over the world. And I love that. But we'll stick close to the comments. And thank you, Caroline. Thank you. Where can we find you? At thethesiscoach.com?
Yes, thethesiscoach.com. So it's quite a mouthful, but that's the name of the business. And I think all my details are on there. So that's my website. Yes. And then, of course, on LinkedIn, I've also got a business page, The Thesis Coach, and then I've got a personal page, which is Caroline Dale. So
wonderful.
I do a lot.
All of those links. All of those links we're going to pop into the comments, The Thesis Coach, Caroline Dale's personal LinkedIn page, and your company page for The Thesis Coach. So we'll put that all into the comments so people can follow. Thank you. And to everybody who's watching, whether you're watching it, catching it on replay, please let us know what city you're watching it from, because I love to see how far in the world this goes. It really is a massive, big global community here on our LinkedIn Lives. And if you're listening to this in podcast version, then you're welcome to share some comments and reviews on the podcast too. And if you're going to be catching this on YouTube, then leave us a comment and let us know what you think about the conversation. Please be sure for everybody who's here on LinkedIn to follow my company page, Licia doing CareerStrategist.co. This is where my team can stay close to you, where we can watch what's going on. And if you have any questions or anything specific around the career revolution or help with career strategy work, you can give me a shout, give me a call. But thank you, Caroline. We're just on time. We've gone a bit over. I could probably spend the rest of the day talking to you because I find it so interesting and so fascinating. But thank you so much for sharing. And we'll certainly see you on LinkedIn.
Thank you, Licia. Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay. Absolute pleasure.
We'll stay in touch.